Books to Prisoners is a longtime Seattle nonprofit sending books to incarcerated people across the United States for over 40 years. And having volunteered there for 27 and a half years, he is only their second longest serving volunteer. Welcome, Andy, and thank you for moderating tonight's conversation.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Aurora, and for essentially leading the festival. And welcome to all of the people who are listening in, and our esteemed panel, who I am going to introduce to you now. We have a pretty large panel, which is pretty exciting. Normally our panels are a little bit smaller. There may be some herding of cats going on, but hopefully not too much. We're honored to have some filmmakers from our prisoner justice program with us tonight. We also are honored to have members of the Social Justice Film Festival's advisory panel. I think at least one of our advisory panel is here at the moment, and Lauren can advise me if she also is here. So let me just go over the folks who I know to be here on our panel tonight. The first is Suchi Branfman, who is a filmmaker and the filmmaker working on Angee's Journey, a documentary dance film. Suchi is a choreographer, director, embodied memory mapper, educator, activist, and abolitionist who is honored to host the story of Angee's journey into the world. Angee Fenelon is a participant in Angee's journey. I wonder if you can work out how she participates. She is the subject of Angee's journey. Angee is a humble and courageous mother who braved the challenges of keeping in constant contact with her son, despite numerous obstacles. Also, excuse me, happy to welcome Ernst Fenelon Jr., also a participant in Angee's journey. Ernst is an international public speaker, author, life coach, and prison reformist who originally created the idea of Angee's journey in order to more deeply empathize with his mother's sacrifices and experiences. From the film Resurgence, we have the filmmaker Kristin Adair. Kristin is a documentary filmmaker with a background in law and non-profit advocacy and a lifelong passion for justice work, and the founder of Unchained Stories, a social impact production company committed to collaborative media making and storytelling through an abolitionist lens. Also from Resurgence is Jonas Gilham. He's a participant in that movie. Jonas is a writer, mentor, creator, and health and masculinity specialist. Marlene McCurtis is here from the film The Circle. Marlene is one of the filmmakers for The Circle. Marlene is a digital and literary storyteller whose expertise spans directing and writing nonfiction television and documentary films, community media engagement, and teaching creative writing in diverse communities. Also from The Circle, we welcome Alan Burnett as a participant in that movie. Alan is a promising author and graduate student inspired by social justice and prison reform. From Seattle Justice Film Institute's Advisory Council, we welcome Michelle Noble. Michelle was is a director, and she directed a film that was in the film festival a few years ago, film Reclamation, The Rise at Standing Rock. Michelle is an award-winning writer, producer, and director of both narrative and documentary films, who was nominated for an Emmy this year for her short documentary, which was, in fact, Reclamation, The Rise at Standing Rock. I don't think Lauren is here, unless Lauren wants to pipe up. No, I think not. So I will not introduce Lauren, but if Lauren shows up and somebody wants to point her out, then I will be happy to introduce her. So folks, this evening, the subject is prisoner justice and the art of social justice film. I have a number of questions. I don't think I'm the most interesting person on this panel. And I don't think I'm the most interesting person outside of the panel who is listening in today. So I definitely encourage our participants on the panel to pipe up if they have a question that they would like to put to other members of the panel, or to put it in chat would be particularly helpful. And then somebody, hopefully, maybe me even, will be paying attention to that. I also encourage people who are listening in who either who have seen some of the films or are waiting until they've seen this panel to watch some of these great films in the Prisoner Justice program before well, sorry, I'll start again. And I will mention that in the Prisoner Justice program, while we have representatives of 3 of the films, there are 3 other films in the program. Robert Lugo, Without Wax, which is a great film, To My Younger Self, and Prayers for Prisoners, which is one of our Youth Visions movies, which was also great, as indeed was To My Younger Self. So having welcomed everybody to the panel, I am going to ask our Prisoner Justice filmmakers to unmute themselves as they feel free. Again, because we have so many folks, I encourage the filmmakers and the rest of the panel to pipe up as they want to. Don't feel that you have to answer every single question or anything else like that. Could be a very long evening if everybody does answer every single question. But the first question that I do have is, can someone from our films tonight, that's Angee's Journey, The Circle, and Resurgence, share a positive and a challenge of working on your film and telling its or your story?
Good evening, everyone. I would say a challenge. You said a challenge, right?
A challenge and a positive.
Okay, one of the challenges for telling my story was how quickly the transition was. I mean, as far as the transition, because we started my story while I was in, and I transitioned to being home. So the challenge was processing my reentry and back into society. And the flip side to that is the positive is that we could finish that film out with me in society. So, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Jonas. I'll just jump in just to follow on to Resurgence. And I was hoping Jonas would pipe up, so I appreciate it. I just wanted to also say that Jonas is a producer and writer on the film, not just a participant. So I just wanted to highlight that. And I would say, I think another challenge certainly was COVID. So Jonas was inside. Luckily, we were able to film with him inside before COVID hit, just by a few weeks, actually. And then, you know, coming home, he was coming home at the time where the pandemic was still kind of raging. And so we were able to sort of navigate that and think creatively about how we could film, even though it wasn't as we envisioned it potentially. And I think the positive outcome of that is that we were able to just really get creative and think outside the box, and had an amazing team of collaborators, Jonas and I, as well as several other creative folks who worked with us, and just really thinking about what we could do with Jonas's amazing poetry, writing, and creative vision. So thank you guys so much for having us as well.
First of all, I'm going to jump in. My name is Marlene. I'm the filmmaker, co-director of The Circle, and I loved your film. So I just want to say that to both you and Jonas. It was so beautiful and so moving. And I think for us, we also kind of had to deal with COVID. That was really a big challenge for us. Normally, with the work that we do with Theater Workers Project, I'm a teaching artist with them. We actually have the men who we work with write the material, and then they also perform it. For us, this material was written in prison, in a workshop at the California State Prison in Lancaster. And then COVID hit. So we couldn't have the men perform the pieces that they wrote. So we had to kind of figure out, we had to be creative and figure out something else. And I think that that was really a challenge. But really what was positive is that we had returning citizens. We had formerly incarcerated men who we'd worked with, and they became the artists, the participants, the actors, and they acted out the words of the men that were from inside, and they also did the movement. So that was really kind of a positive, that we were so lucky to have that. But we filmed it all during COVID. So we filmed on Zoom, and we also filmed movement socially distanced. And so we were very lucky to have amazing participants and artists like Burnett to be by our side, to be able to make this film a reality.
I'll just chime in real quick regarding Angee's journey. Had it not been for COVID, there may not have been the documentary of Angee's journey, because originally the idea of Angee's journey was a theatrical performance. And so we began to do the theatrical performance. We were going to the different locations, performing live, and then COVID hit. But fortunate for us, we've been taking video footage of the live performances, and we were able to craft together this amazing work and create the documentary. And the positive of it was allowed us to actually reach more people. It also allowed us, particularly in this case, where for Angee's journey, Angee is right here, right? With Angee's journey was that we had very deep conversations, including within our own family, right? This thing that had not been able to be talked about. Suddenly we're talking with family that was in Haiti, the country of Haiti, and New York and Florida, and we're able to reach people around the world literally by having the documentary be put together. So it was a very powerful, uplifting, liberating opportunity that has transformed our lives for sure.
I can just chime in very briefly. I guess if we all respond to everything, you're right, Jody, but it's an honor, of course, to be here. And being a choreographer at the core of my work, it was, as Ernst said, pretty amazing to all of a sudden find work becoming a more of a screen-based project. How beautiful. That was a great positive thing. And what I was going to say about some of the positives is that all the people who perform in this piece and who are involved with it on many different levels, sound score and all sorts of things, have all been deeply impacted by this, by being part of this project. And we've spent hours and hours having conversations about our own, those of us who have not been system impacted, perhaps, our own relationship to incarceration and mass incarceration. So to me, that's been one of the most powerful things in this project. It's been just astonishing. And I would say one of the hardest things that I experienced in this project was when Ernst and I took the journey that Angee had taken for all those years to visit him inside. When we actually went inside to the prison where Ernst had been incarcerated for almost 15 years. And he's fully, running and dancing, and you can see that in the film. But when he had gone in there and had some major injuries, I guess you could say, and had struggled with walking. He was walking with a cane. Ernst can explain it, but it was astonishing and alarming to see the way his muscle memory, when we were back inside the prison, everything, his whole body started to lean, and he kind of had to support himself to actually get through our time there. And that was just an astonishing moment. So it's a very specific, astonishing moment, but.
Those are some great answers. Thank you, panelists. My next question is, observers of prisoner-related social justice films gain knowledge, insight, and understanding through our observation of those films. What can or should the incarcerated participants gain from their participation?
I think I can speak to that. I wanted to circle back on the circle, but I'll answer this question too. So my name is Alan Burnett. I was sentenced to death by incarceration, which is life without parole. I served 28 years, and I'm a participant in the circle. But prior to being a participant in that program, I was a part of Theater Workers Project, which was the organization that would come inside the institution. And one of the things that I gained from participating in the program was the ability to be able to express myself through artistic work in a way that I'd never had before. For me, being incarcerated, like there was no real outlets for being able to tell someone that I was lonely, to tell someone that I was hurt, that I was afraid, that I was hopeless. But participating in this space right here, it gave me an opportunity and a way to express that, which also impacted the other participants in the program. And what that did was that built a bond between us, and we were able to become friends and support each other once we left that space and went on into our daily lives while incarcerated. But I just wanted to say one more thing about challenges and the other thing that you had talked about earlier. I'd only been home 4 months when I was able to participate in the circle. And in that time, COVID had just hit and the program was completely shut down where there was no movement. And I was leaving after 28 years, men that I had grown to love, men that I had shared similar stories with and experiences. And I knew that these men, some of them would never get out of prison. And so having the opportunity to come out and to read their work, to read their words, it impacted me in a way that it was extremely challenging for me, and I was moved emotionally. But the outcome was that those men's words, their stories, their lives will be able to be shared. And I'm thankful to be sitting here today, because had it not been for that program, you wouldn't even know who any of these men were. No one would. And so their voices were able to leave prison, and they're out here now, and we're all talking about it. So I think that's amazing, and I'm just so grateful. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Angee, and I would like just to say I'm happy of the opportunity to be with you tonight. And a long time ago, the voice of a prisoner was not really understood. But now that is a little bit more conceivable. You hear. You can hear the voice of a incarcerated a person. Because long time ago, as soon as someone was going to prison, that was like that a reject of society, and nobody want to hear about it, even the family. And what I would say, now we did make a progress. People understood more, they can hear the voice of the incarcerated people. And what I can say is the social justice would recognize some of the work the people, incarcerated people can do. That's not to just let them go and throw away the key. That rehabilitation, because they will come to society.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Angee. That was great. And this is Andy, the moderator, speaking. And as Aurora mentioned, I've been volunteering with the organization Books to Prisoners for 27.5 years now. And I think I really do agree with you that this is not a golden age of reform yet. We're not nearly there, but I think there's a notable change in the wind. I think there's a much greater understanding and empathy. This is a journey, like Angee's journey. This is a journey, but we're not quite there yet. But I think things are changing.
If I would add from the incarcerated perspective, what I would hope someone would take from all of this is to deepen their empathy. Whether you're in the incarcerated, to remember those who supported you for every day you were in, they were in too. The things that they went through that we don't really understand. And most of us, many who get out, we kind of embrace and we kind of move on. We don't take the time to really sit down and have those intense conversations. What was their experience, right? To support us, right? What things like, as we traveled with Angee's journey, one of the powers of Angee's journey is always a conversation afterwards. And I never forgot this woman whose husband was incarcerated for 30 years. None of her coworkers knew he was incarcerated. And she worked at the same place for over 30 years because of the penalty that she might face if they knew. And that just blew me away. And the fact that she got a chance to speak about that, I just thought that it's powerful. So I think for me, Angee's journey is a symbolism of those who are incarcerated to recognize the incarceration of our loved ones as well with us on the journey and to really hear their story for the first time.
I'm just going to take a quick moment to mention that another member of the panel has arrived, Lauren Taubman, who is a member of the Social Justice Film Institute's Advisory Council. And she was the producer of the film Kill Switch, which was also shown at the, I want to say it was shown at the film festival. Don't quote me on that. Lauren is a film producer and an attorney. So the next question I have is, social justice films are often a call to action. What is one thing that people watching the films on tonight's program could do to move the needle?
I volunteer for that one. I would say what you do, volunteer, in prisons or in some form of social justice work, because as a person who was inside for 17 and a half years, like I saw how the volunteers that come in, how they can have a great impact and bring that humanity into the system that is lacking a lot of the times from the staff members, because most of the times they all jaded. Prison is just a negative place. It's a low vibing and miserable place for anybody who was there for an extended period of time. So volunteers have a fresh spirit, and when they come in most of the time, and they bring, hope in an otherwise hopeless place a lot of the time. So I would say that's one thing that people watching could do in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Even if you don't want to go inside of a prison, it's things, other volunteer work, other ways of supporting. But that would be my suggestion.
I'm just going to piggyback on that because Jonas and I like to do that. position to go inside. And actually, that's not really possible in most places, given the pandemic still ongoing. But think about how you can connect with formerly incarcerated folks in your community outside. And all of this work that we do as filmmakers, as social justice filmmakers, I believe is about, and I think it was Ernst who said building empathy, but it's just about seeing and hearing and knowing one another, and folks who have different life experiences than our own. Brian Stevenson says in his book that the only way we're going to solve the problem is if we get within hugging distance of the problem. And I'm a firm believer in that. So, you know, not just thinking about broad issues, not just thinking about policy reforms, but thinking about people and how can you connect with folks in your community and find out what they need, find out how you can support them, listen to their stories, start there.
I'll piggyback on with you, Kristin, there, in terms of some of the things that Brian Stevenson kind of mentions and uses as some guideposts. The idea after getting proximate, getting close enough to hug folks, which of course we know right now we can't get into hug, but of course it's a bigger concept, of course, and also the idea of working to change the dominant narrative, that we can educate ourselves and our communities. There's so much we can be doing right now in terms of that. Find the organizations that are doing the work, and there are lots of them. And of course, I'm sure all of us here can host organizations into the chat to you all. There's lots of actions happening as we speak. And also another sort of guiding concept is that we have to be willing to be uncomfortable as we continue to do the work on the outside. That's just something we will be uncomfortable, and we all know about that for sure. So yeah, and much more. But maybe I'm happy to stick some organizations in the chat and some campaigns that are going on right now that we're supporting. But yeah,
Please, that would
I'll
be
pass
great.
it to. Do I get to choose who I pass it to? Oh no, I'm not gonna call in anyone, but I call in my great colleagues.
Yeah, anyone who has an organization that they'd like to suggest, feel free to put something in the chat for sure. Websites or similar, that would be great. Did anybody else? Sorry, did anybody else want to answer that question?
I'll chime in again and just say, I just encourage everybody to get in where you fit in. Not everybody can be on the front line. Some people can be in the campaign of writing letters. A society will always be judged how it treats its most vulnerable people. And I think whether it's the elderly, the houseless, the mental health, people having mental health issues, or the incarcerated, until a society can begin to see the holistic approach of all areas of how it's going to function, then it will never be whole and it will never heal properly. And I think that is the key, is to get proximate. Not everybody has the same comfort level. And I think that's just important for us to move forward. Very few people are happy. You know, I grew up back east, you know, and in my days, you know, we had the rent parties, right? You know, somebody was short on rent, everybody blocks off the street, you have a party, everybody throws in a few dollars and contributes, right? We need to build more community and begin to build more of that identity rather than this alien aspect of whoever might be, whether we're even dealing with immigration issues or whatever. It's all the same. It's about that empathy. We must grow and connect to have a better world, if that's where we want to get to. So I just encourage that.
Thank you, Ernst. We have a question from the audience, and the question is that they would love to hear what filmmakers, producers, and participants on the panel think about what might be the principles, values, and approach in creating a social justice film.
I think respect and empathy, some of the things that we're talking about already. Kristin and I have we started drafting up our own policy that would highlight just those things right there, how we want to deal with people and be like develop people first language for quote unquote inmates. We've been stopped using that word though. Inmates are residents of whatever institution that they live in at that time. But just more people-based vocabulary language, because vocabulary words are important. As artists and myself as a poet, I'm very cognizant of that. And so that's one of the ways in which we, Kristin and I, are establishing that part of how we deal with people and conduct business. So that's one way.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I think that when we're going in and we're creating films that have a social justice message, and I really see it really having a human message. I mean, that's really what we're doing. We are telling human stories, and I think engagement in a real way with who, that it is a collaborative process. And that I love what you said, Suchi, about we may be uncomfortable. And I think that even with making the circle, one of the things that we had to really learn was just how we were interacting with men and artists who we had worked with, and what our demands were, and pulling back and understanding where they were coming from. So I think always really leaning in with an open heart and open ears and an open mind, and not being afraid to also learn and fall and get up. So I think those are, for me, those are principles in terms of, doing a film that is a human-based film versus, that's how I see, not a social justice film, but a human-centered film.
Thanks, Marlene. I was also going to say collaboration. That's sort of my central value, and this idea that the folks who are incarcerated or formerly incarcerated folks are the experts in their stories, and we as filmmakers are not. And so the first thing I do is listen, and the second thing I do is collaborate and think about different ways and approaches to do that, and sometimes getting really creative, particularly with folks inside. But that's really the driver. They, folks whose stories we are telling are the drivers in the process.
And maybe to follow up on that also, in that collaboration and in telling the stories, I hope always to then facilitate a conversation with audiences about our positioning and understanding our relationship to the work and the individual stories, always put in the context of society, especially as social justice filmmakers. How do we always put these stories within the context of the society, and how we will, to have those conversations. I better stop.
I think I wanted to piggyback off of what Marlene said again, the idea of, rather than labels, the humanity, the connection of that. One of the projects, another project that Suchi and I worked on, it's called Undance Dances Through Prison Walls during a pandemic. And the power of that project deals with people who are incarcerated, who are write their choreography, and then a person like me who was formerly incarcerated gets to narrate it. And then we had dancers who were never incarcerated perform it in this collaboration of humanity right through prison walls, that demystifying that there's value where we choose to see it speaks volumes. And I think that's the important thing, is seeing the value of the human spirit wherever it is, and discovering the talents and gifts of so many of our incarcerated brothers and sisters. Their incredible talent it's mind-blowing in their storytelling, their performances, their artistry is absolutely incredible.
Do our advisory council members, either Michelle or Lauren, want to pipe up here on this question of what might be the principles, values, and approach in creating a social justice film?
I think everyone on this panel has so eloquently said all the things I believe as well, that it's connection, a human connection, and the story comes from that, a conversation, and listening first, and then connecting and honoring the people that you're filming and that you're in collaboration with, because the camera is the most powerful thing, but it can only be powerful when, you know, when truth is presented. So truth is presented only when there's trust. So there's trust and conversation and going in the right way. That's what we did at Standing Rock, and we were, you know, honoring not only a historical event, but the peoples that were at the forefront, these young folks that were at the forefront of this movement and this situation, which was extremely personal, but also global. So I think that was where you have to really dig in to the personal, and then the rest is just takes off in terms of how the audience sees the viewpoint of a social justice, because they follow the personal story, and how deep you get into the personal story really changes everyone that experiences it on the ground and then experiences it by viewing it.
Thank you, everyone, for answering that question. We have another question from the audience. And this question is, for the filmmakers, when did the films you were going to make start to take shape for you? Was it during the shooting or the editing? Did you know all along exactly what film you were going to make?
Okay, I'll jump in. Come on, filmmakers. You know, in some ways, our film came out of necessity, as I mentioned, that we really had to kind of figure out. We had these wonderful writings by these men inside, and how were we going to take that work and bring it into the world. I think so. That was one of the things, and we collaborate. We have a team of artists that we work with. I think for my film, I had some vision of what I wanted to do visually, but my co-director, Alexa Kirshner, is a movement specialist. So I was working with a choreographer. So together we had to kind of figure out what movement we were going to add to these words and how we were going to blend that together. And then me bringing in a camera person, a still photographer, we did stop motions. I had some ideas, but in a lot of ways, and then we did the Zoom thing, and we were just keeping our fingers crossed that everything would work out. And obviously we had, we had an editor who saw our material and helped shape it. And then at the very end, I decided to do interviews with the men who were performing. And it was really more about them giving a shout out or just acknowledging the men inside. And quite honestly, when we first made this film, although we're really happy that it's being shown, we were really, in many ways, making it for the men inside, right? We were making it for them. We wanted them to see their work. So that was kind of our first audience. I don't know if that really answers the question, but I think we did have some vision, but it also developed as we were in process.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think that our film it took many iterations, and it was a journey, because we actually started filming. We started filming inside with Jonas, in part to show the work that he was doing inside, which is around healthy masculinity and facilitating groups and conversations with other men, which was so powerful. And so we started there, and then COVID hit, and I wasn't able to go back inside. We didn't know, hearings and things were getting delayed. We didn't know when Jonas might have an opportunity to be released, but we spent a lot of time on the phone over the summer, just sort of talking about what he was working on and what his vision was. And, I think also his vision was to come home and be facilitating groups and working with young men, but that wasn't really possible because of COVID. So it shifted from what I think might have been more of a documentary to something that ended up being really this beautiful sort of video poem that we were able to create collaboratively out of Jonas's writing and vision. And it also continued to evolve in the editing, as these things are wont to do. So it took a life of its own and an amazing creative team, but I think the process is always a winding path, and particularly in this time and with this type of work. So yeah, thanks for that question.
It's such a beautiful, it's a beautiful poem. It's so powerful. And the circle too. It's so amazing how at the end, all the people who were performing speak to their brothers inside. It is, and in terms of the circle, it's really gorgeous. And all I was going to say is we are in a deep collaboration continually. So I can really I'm just part of the delineation between filmmaker, editor, the person people whose stories are being told. In this case, it just feels very intertwined. The journey has been a deeply intertwining one. And we had no idea, first of all, as we said earlier, that this would be a film. And it was an invitation to take the journey that Ernst's mother had taken for so many years. And so it was in the, but you can't take a journey until you know like where you're going. So we had to meet with her and find out, how'd you get there? What was your pathway? What was all of that? And that was the beginning. And that was, I just had my camera on a tripod. It's terrible footage. And we actually didn't use any of that, but we used her voice. Used is not the right word. We centered the work in Angee's voice, actually, and it got and it was that centering and that recording, I think, that guided us through the whole journey, and then the way that interfaced with Ernst telling his story inside, kind of waiting and being there. So it was just a complete collaboration all along. So I think it developed. It kept going along. As a matter of fact, at one point, we were rehearsing for a performance, and we were in the middle of it, and then Ernst said, "Oh, I should show you the photos." I'm like, "What photos?" He said, "All the photos from all of our visits. I have right, Ernst?" And you say that, he said, "Oh yeah, I have a couple hundred." I was like, "Wait, we're right in the middle of this piece. We're going to be performing it in another month, and it was just so everything just kept happening like that, and the fact that we were rehearsing and we were laying the pieces, these powerful photos of prison visits, all on the floor. And in the midst of that, it was like, wait, we have to put them on something. They are sacred. They have to be on. So everything just kept transforming. And that thus has been just this stunning collaboration, even into the editing, which, as I'm not an editor, have never done that. But the editing was also this beautiful collaboration. The three of us, Ernst and myself and collaborator Tom Tsai, who couldn't be here. It was just this continual collaboration. We'd watch stuff and say, no, let's move it. But I guess that's what filmmakers do. And that's so amazing, beautiful process. And there's Ernst.
Thank you. Those are some great answers. Anybody feel free to jump in, or I will move on to the next question. And Michelle, looks like you want to say something.
I just wanted to say this question is so great, and it comes up every now and again, but it's hilarious for any filmmaker, documentarian in particular, because you think you know what you're filming, and then it just goes into, I don't know any documentarian that where it doesn't go into a either completely different spin or a different avenue or something. And it's the great stories of all the great documentaries that you love. It began one way, ends a different way, and the journey is so fantastic. So anyway, I just wanted to say that I just love this question. It's fun.
Cool. So the next question, back to my questions, unfortunately. This is sort of a multiple choice question, so you panelists may choose to treat it as such, or feel free to completely blow my points out of the water and come up with a completely different answer. I'm one of the people who helps select films for the Social Justice Film Festival, and I've watched a lot of prisoner-related films. Creativity, whether through art, poetry, dance, or theatre, is a recurring theme. Is this the filmmaker seeking out an arts-related subject because of their personal love of arts? Or are arts fundamental to changing behavior? Or are arts simply a way to humanize the subjects of the film? Or something different?
All right, then I'll jump in on that one. I think arts are a medium to share a beautiful message. It is a rhythm that comes in the body and presents itself through the arts, because the message is so central to human values and needs and wants. Ultimately, all of these films that have been selected hit to the core of that human value. And art is a way that speaks to the soul rather than to the mind. And I think it's that part for me, because I'll tell you, when I met Suchi, I said, I am not a dancer. I am not dancing. I am not doing none of this stuff, not me, right? But when we looked at the story and the message was so big, right, about all of the mothers and wives and children and everyone who has to travel through a state where they can transfer you up and down the state at any given time. And for a while, we had the out of state transfers where people are traveling ridiculous levels to stay in touch with their loved one. And we know that's central to successful reentry. The story and the art was so powerful that my fear was allayed by the message that needed to be relayed. And so when I threw myself into it, then I think that's where the power of art comes in, because when you feel the message, you forget about petty little things about what people think about you, or what they think about how, like, that doesn't even matter, because it's so important to so many people.
Marlene, I'm looking at you because I want to see your picture with the cat in there as well.
Yes, my cat did make a little guest appearance. Yeah, I think what Ernst said. I think that's what he said. I think that it's interesting. It's a kind of a three-part question. I feel like art is this amazing way that we can connect with each other, right? And I think that partly what I hope we're doing and what we're trying to do is to tell a human story, to touch people. I mean, for me, that's really my driving force, that I want to make people feel, right? And so through artistic expression, we can do that. I think that when we go, I think that's so important. And I think that in terms of humanizing, I think one of the things that I've found is that everyone we work with, they're already human, deeply human. And that's also kind of part of the pain of being incarcerated, because these beautiful human beings, as Ernst said, poets, writers, painters, I mean, these intellects are behind bars and not able to flourish. So I think that hopefully in a small way, as artists going inside, we're helping, not even helping is not the right word. We're just providing space for that art to be expressed, for that humanity to be expressed. And if we're lucky, sometimes we have a camera and we capture that. I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah, what Ernst said. Alan should answer this question. Alan, you've been quiet. I'm calling you out.
You know, me answering this question is just complimenting everything everybody else said. Somebody put in the chat, all of the above. And for me, it is all of the above. With regards to the transformative power that it has on the people who are incarcerated, men and women, just from my personal experience, like I shared a little bit before, when we were going through these periods and we were doing these performances, men were allowed to tell their story of their trauma, their pain, and their triumph, and how they overcame these things. And that allowed them to build this feeling of self-efficacy, where they were going to go on the facility and help other people. But then on the other end of it, it's the art. This is what connects us to society. Like, everyone can appreciate a beautiful story, something written that just warms your heart, or something that's painted that tells the complete story about how a man got to a point to where he can harm another human being. And they're telling it from the standpoint of someone who was harmed himself. And I'm just, you know, my heart is full right now, and I'm in awe of all this, everything that's going on around me. Like, I didn't know, I wasn't aware. When I was inside, we would hear all the time that, you know, there's so many different people out there that are looking for you, that are working for you and helping you. And because my world was so small, I could never fathom what that looked like until I'm actually have came out of prison. And I've only been home 16 months. And I'm just amazed by all of you who are coming and sharing this space, but for the purpose of not exploitation, but being able to show the world, you know, these are the people who we have incarcerated. And Ernest, congratulations to you to be able to come home and to be able to come home to your mom. That's, bless you. That's truly a blessing. For a lot of us, that was something that we strive to get to, and we weren't able to obtain that. And I understand completely that every day that we do in prison, our parents, our brothers and sisters, loved ones, they do it with us. My mother been to every prison I was at, didn't miss a holiday, every up and down the state. And the only thing that she wanted was for me to be able to come home and just to be her son. Unfortunately, my mother passed away before I even had the opportunity to be able to let her know that I was coming home. So my heart goes out to you, and God bless you. And God bless everybody on here, because you don't realize, I'm not gonna say that you don't, but the men that I associate with, the women, some of the women on this call are formerly incarcerated as well. And they will be able to echo what I'm saying, that because of the work that you do, like sharing this space with us, you are helping us more ways than you imagine. And that's all I got right now.
That's a lot, Alan. And as the managing director for the Social Justice Film Institute, I want to definitely thank you. And when you said that because your world was so small, we want to make sure that it is not. And that here you are with us tonight, along with all the other filmmakers and producers and participants and audience members engaged about social justice films as the art of something different than regular films. I want to encourage as many of the filmmakers, as well as those associated with the films, to join us at the Social Justice Filmmakers Social Hour this weekend, because we'll be talking a lot more about building an intentional community for social justice filmmaking. We do believe that there is a different kind of framework of ethics, of storytelling, of centering humans, of centering people and connections that transcends even in these COVID times where we live. And as grassroots and as lonely as we may each feel in these moments, we want to make sure that together we can actually lift each other up. So please join us because this conversation is just the beginning. And I want to thank all of you for the films that you've shared, the lives that you also share on screen with us, and also your creativity. The Social Justice Film Festival started out from a prisoner justice movement, and we will always be. Andy?
Thank you, Aurora. I mean, this has been a fantastic experience, and I can't believe how quickly it has gone, but we have gone through our hour. I hope everybody has found this an engaging conversation. I certainly have, and I've gotten some real insights into some of the filmmakers, some of their perspectives, and some of the folks who were the participants. And I'm so impressed. And I hope for the folks who have not seen the films in the prisoner justice program that you, or maybe not tonight because it might be getting a little late, but we'll take the opportunity to take a look at them. And not only them, there's a lot of great films in the festival, as there is every year. So if anybody wants to make a quick final statement or words or anything, you should feel free to. Otherwise, we will wrap up after I've just wanted to say a real heartfelt thank you for all the participants for spending some time with us this evening, and for making such thoughtful, thought-provoking, and in all these cases, beautiful films.
I just want to quickly say, man, welcome home, Alan and Ernst. You know what I mean? From one comrade to another. I've enjoyed listening to the stories, and I enjoy watching all of the films. I appreciate being here. And yeah, this was a great time. Thanks.
Thank you. Come join us.